The New York Post this week reports some major breaking news. You are basically a crackhead, and so am I, it would seem. Everyone is a crackhead. The world is full of crackheads, which on second thought might not come as news at all, though the reason may be a bit of a surprise.
I don't know how someone can put out such a brilliant documentary and still say some of the stupidest shit. Matt Walsh, my man. I again would always thank him for What is a Woman, which I think literally should be played in every university class, every high school class there is across the board. However, I think Matt Walsh must have had a lot of help with that documentary because he just continuously says a lot of stuff that I'm like, what the fuck? Matt Walsh doesn't believe food addiction is real. I'm pretty sure he also thinks depression is a myth. Food addiction is a real addiction, and I have my reasons why I think Matt Walsh is trying to belittle or downplay the idea of food addiction. And I love when like people are trying to build a narrative, right? You know, like they weave a narrative, they say things a certain way to make it sound like what they're saying is more logical, and the other argument is so stupid. So they'll say things like Matt Walsh said in his video, "Oh my god, so eating a donut is just as bad as shooting crack in your eyeballs. Really? A donut is just as bad as crack cocaine?" Like, no one's saying a donut is just as bad as crack cocaine. Or, apparently guys, if anybody likes to eat food, you're all just as bad as drug addicts. No one's saying that, but he will word it that way, so it makes it sound like what he's saying is more logical, and the other argument is just so crazy because who gets eating a cookie means you're an addict? What are you talking about?
It turns out that if you really enjoy eating potato chips, and if you struggle to stick to the serving size on the nutrition label, then you are an addict.
No, looking like this person, looking like someone who can't literally no longer use their legs, someone who's literally on the verge of death and still cannot resist the urge to stuff their face with the thing that is killing them. That is what the fuck food addiction is. I'm so sick of people trying to belittle something because it doesn't go with their ideology when it's a serious thing. Like, food addiction is literally killing people. But leave it up to Matt Walsh and his audience to make it seem like it's such a dumb little thing to actually think exists, where obesity is literally epidemic. Obesity is literally a crisis, but food addiction is not real.
At the tender age of 12, she weighs nearly 200 pounds. For her final meal before departure, Amanda's mother is letting her eat whatever she wants until she feels sick.
Matt Walsh is very anti-drug, right? And so for him to belittle food addiction is to heighten this idea that drugs should never be legalized. And this is my assumption and reason why I think Matt Walsh is belittling food addiction, because how dare you say something I think is disgusting is equally on the same level as something that we eat on a daily basis. But that's not the point. It's not if you like to eat, if you like to occasionally indulge, if you like to have an extra scoop of ice cream, doesn't mean you're an addict. But again, when you can't even like pick up your child because you can barely move, because you can't even take breath, because you're out of breath if you just scoot over one seat, because you're that big and you're that out of shape and you're that morbidly obese, but you still can't put down the food. That is what food addiction is. And food addiction is just as harmful and just as deadly as, in my opinion, crack cocaine or shooting heroin up your arms. It's literally been studies out there, but leave it up to the religious folks to keep just bashing science, and it doesn't exist, right? Because Matt Walsh is religious, and I think some of this stuff is a religious talking point, because I heard the same talking points when I was in church. Like, it's not real, addiction's not real, it's just a spirit, right? Depression's not real, you're just being attacked by a spirit. Science has been created in the secular world, right? I've heard all the talking points.
Stick to the serving size on the nutrition label, then you are an addict. But if you struggle to keep your consumption down to that level, you might as well be shooting up heroin, according to the science. The New York Post reports the news with this headline, quote, "Ice cream and potato chips are just as addictive as cocaine or heroin." Research. That's according to research. Research says that. Reading on, Can't put down that bag of potato chips? Science says it's not you, it's the junk food. Ultra-processed foods, or UPFs, are just as addictive as nicotine, cocaine, or heroin. Experts say, and more than 1 in 10 people are hooked. A new analysis of 281 studies across 36 different countries have uncovered that a staggering 14% of adults are hooked on UPFs. The finding is shocking, given that UPFs, think sausage, ice cream, biscuits, soft drinks, sugary cereals, have previously been linked to cognitive decline, cancer, psychological distress, and even an early death. The analysis was led by University of Michigan professor Ashley Gearhart, who previously created the Yale Food Addiction Scale by applying the same criteria that experts use to diagnose substance addiction. The criteria includes uncontrollable and excessive consumption, cravings, and continued intake despite potential negative health effects. Quote, the combination of refined carbohydrates and fats often found in UPFs seems to have a supra-additive effect on brain reward systems above either macronutrient alone, which may increase the addictive potential of these foods. Gearhart and the study's authors wrote in their new findings published in the BMJ. Well, we're then told that scientists want a cigarette-style warning label on processed food, cautioning the poor, addicted, helpless consumer that the ice cream he's buying is unhealthy and won't help him achieve his weight loss goals. This is necessary, they say, because the food is addictive, just like heroin and cocaine.
A dangerous way to see things, in my opinion, right? Because someone who has food addiction can be watching Matt Walsh, and Matt Walsh is literally telling him that you are not actually addicted. You're fine. You don't need help. You don't need to change in any way, because just overeating doesn't add up to addiction where it literally can. There's literally been science studies like graphs and x-rays that show up that the parts of your brain light up just like the parts of the brain light up when someone does a street drug or a recreational drug, right?
Which is, of course, why our streets are riddled with homeless bums whose lives have been destroyed because of their junk food addiction. You know the stories. First the guy buys a pack of Oreos, and next thing you know, he's robbing a Cold Stone Creamery and stealing the ice cream, not the cash. In fact, they even made a movie about a man's plunge into ice cream addiction. It was called Requiem for a Cream, which is a joke that I saw on Twitter, but I wish I'd thought of myself. Anyway, this is a real issue, is the point. That's why junk food withdrawal can be so severe. You go to your pantry, find out that you're out of Pop-Tarts, then you start sweating, you have chills, a fever, you begin vomiting, you're on the ground shaking, having a seizure. Many people have died from Pop-Tart withdrawal. Because it's just like being addicted to heroin. Exactly the same. I recently read a story about a woman who turned to prostitution just to feed her Pringle addiction. Pringle prostitutes, they call them on the streets. Pringle-toots, in fact, is the word. You can find them on the same street corner as the donut dealers selling black market Krispy Kremes to a bunch of strung-out junk food junkies. Again, this is all very real, except for the fact that it's entirely made up. There are many made-up addictions that these days, but none of them are as absurd as food addiction. Okay? I'm just going to tell you right now, food addiction is not a thing. You are not an addict. You're just a glutton. And despite what psychologists who want to medicalize every human vice or virtue might claim, gluttony is not the same thing as addiction.
When I saw this video, I was just really disappointed. Again, it's the same thing. I think I've seen the Matt Walsh and Candace Owens talk about like depression's not real, that people don't really need therapy, mental health is not real, all another stuff is real. And I do think sometimes it comes from a religious talking point. I also, again, with Matt Walsh, I think is to belittle eating, food addiction, so it can heighten the addiction that he's really after, which is drug addiction or drug use or recreational drugs becoming legalized in certain states. But I think a lot of it comes from a religious talking point, because when I was religious, I was told the same thing, that addiction is not real, depression is not real, anxiety is not real, mental health is not real, nobody needs therapy is evil, and that you should only listen to your pastor even if they're dealing in kids and stealing from the congregation. That's not all pastors. A lot of people in my church worship pastors who are even doing bad shit to people behind the scenes and bad shit to your own congregation, and still listen to your pastor. So I think a lot of that's where it comes from. Food addiction is a real thing, just like depression is a real thing, just like anxiety is a real thing, and just like some therapy can actually be helpful, not all therapy, and that's why you need to shop around and figure out what's right for you and which therapist is good for you. So this is just a quick video just to be like, what the fuck, Matt Walsh?